The man had been rather enthusiastic on the phone. He had been using the rock as a doorstop but needed to see it as soon as possible. The hour had felt like an eternity, and he scrambled out of the car as soon as it stopped. The expert looked at the rock with a bewildered expression. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. That's when Ben realized his life was in for a big change. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Ben smiled at the old couple as they settled on a price for the old farmhouse and its surroundings. They shook on it, and he could move in immediately. It was now his farm. He had always dreamed of the life, and now it was his. He just needed to fill it with cows and pigs and look after the crops like the old-timer had done his whole life. He had never owned a farm before, but he was keen to learn the ropes. But as they walked outside, something caught his eye. Ben knew that the farm he wanted to purchase in Dexter, Michigan wasn't exactly in the best shape, but he still wanted to know what he was getting himself into. But after a while of touring the property, he just couldn't help himself. He turned to the old man, whom he had just bought the property from, and asked him what it was. The man smiled and told him it was a doorstop. They had been using the piece of rock for over 50 years to keep the barn doors open. The old man's father had told him it was special, but he used to suspect that it was probably just to keep him excited about feeding the pigs. Ben shook his head and shook the old man's hand again. The old man told him to keep using the rock and that it was valuable to him. He winked as he walked to his old truck. Ben had no idea what he was talking about but decided to honor his request. After the couple and real estate agent left, he was alone on the farm. He had the keys to the front gate and to all of the doors in the house. He was so chuffed with his purchase that he decided to take a walk around his property. He knew his father would be ecstatic, and as part of his retirement, Ben would offer him a home on the property and allow him to help out if he wanted. He knew his father would love it, but he had no idea there was more to this new farm than met the eye. Ben could smell the wet, compacted dirt and the rain in the trees as he took a stroll around his property. There was a nice open field behind the barn where he imagined he could grow any crops his dad wanted. It was curious that the previous farmers hadn't already grown crops there, but after getting closer, something caught his eye. Something very strange was in the field, and he would need answers. Ben saw a small crater in the middle of the field. It was clear that this was the reason why they hadn't grown their crops there. But why hadn't they filled it in? It was also clear that it was no normal crater. He decided to give the previous owner a ring then and there. He needed to know what was going on, and the old man was the only person who could give him the answers he was looking for. When the old-timer finally answered on the other end of the call, he seemed surprised to hear from Ben just an hour after he had bought the property. But once Ben explained why he was calling, the man seemed to go silent. He was never chatty, but Ben could tell he didn't want to say anything. Had they scammed him when he bought the property? Then the man gave him more of a riddle than an answer. He simply told him that it all circled back to the rock. The rock in question was unlike any rock or stone Ben had ever seen before. "What about the rock?" Ben asked, trying to get the man to talk. That's when the farmer revealed that it wasn't of our world at all. The rock had a long story behind it, one that seems straight from a novel or a movie. But the farmer recounted his tale with sincerity and seriousness. The old man sighed and told him about the strange sightings that began in Michigan in the mid-1960 seconds that finally culminated in one of the most famous legends of the Dexter area. At around 8:30 p.m. on the 20th of March 1966, Frank Manor, the man's father, was spending a quiet evening at home in their farmhouse when he and his teenage son saw lights in the night sky. As the old man explained it, his father and older brother Roland watched from the farmhouse windows as a strange object appeared to land on their farm. Frank and Roland immediately dashed out to investigate, but they were completely blindsided by what they saw. The strange ball of light was silently hovering over a marshy area of their farm. In Frank's account, the object disappeared, only to reappear around 500 yards away just seconds later. Frank recalled hearing a sharp sound, like a rifle bullet ricocheting off an object. Then, the light disappeared. When Frank Manor called the police to make a report, they learned that they weren't the only ones who had witnessed something strange that night. A few police officers who had been patrolling the area had also seen something, and other people had been reporting sightings all week. Dozens of people saw something in the night sky, and Dexter, Michigan, appeared to be the epicenter. The sightings were widespread and included credible accounts from senators, law enforcement officials, and governors. Soon, J. Allen Hynek, an astrophysicist from Northwestern University, was sent out to Dexter to investigate. He concluded that the people had seen something, but put the sightings down to rotting vegetation in the marshes, creating gases that, when released, could produce light and even sound. But the old man's tale only got weirder from there. The old man went on to say that a few weeks after the sightings, his father and older brother had seen something come down at night on their property, and it had made a heck of a noise when it hit. In the morning, his father had found the crater and dug the strange object out. It was still warm, the old man recalled, but something wasn't adding up for Ben. Why was it being used as a doorstop? After Ben ended the call, he felt that he had way more questions than answers. The old man had finally told him about the doorstop that was used to keep the barn doors open. He decided to take a closer look at it. He made his way back to the barn and found the rock sitting on the ground. He could tell the rock had been lying there for a while since it was covered in mud, but still, there was something compelling about it. The thought of the strange rock being used as a doorstop may have colored Ben's opinion of the dull object. If, for 30 or 40 years, someone had used something as a valueless object, it clearly wasn't actually worth anything, right? And so, for the next 8 years, the rock remained as it had for decades, on the floor in the dusty barn, propping open the door until a meteorite shower occurred. Ben had a family now, and they all knew the rock was special in an unrealized and overlooked kind of way. They basically took a piece of another world completely for granted until more rocks fell from the sky and people began featuring them on the evening news. People all over Michigan were finding meteorites in their own backyards following a meteor shower in 2018, and they certainly weren't using them as doorstops. More than a few people had realized that there was an opportunity to earn a neat sum of money from the little space rocks scattered across Michigan. Prompted by the sudden wave of excitement in meteorites, Ben decided that there may be more to the rock his children had taken to school for show and tell all these years. But first, he needed to know whether this strange stone was truly special or just a tall tale from the farmer who once owned the land. Ben knew he had to contact the right people. Luckily, a friend who had studied geology at Central Michigan University pointed him toward an expert. Soon, Ben was on the phone with Dr. Nestor, who agreed to examine the rock, though she didn't expect much. Still, what the old farmer had told Ben pushed him to contact another professor from the state university. When Ben described the rock, the professor grew unexpectedly tense and told him he would be at the farm within the hour. It must have been a big deal. He had dropped everything to see the rock Ben had been using as a doorstop. When the expert finally arrived and looked at it, he could barely speak. Ben instantly knew his life was about to change. The professor explained that he had examined hundreds of supposed meteorites brought in by hopeful people over the years, but almost all of them were simple meteor wrongs. Yet from the moment he saw Ben's stone, he knew it wasn't ordinary. Tests were needed to confirm it, but he was already confident. What Ben had been using as a doorstop for 50 years was far older and far more valuable than he realized. For anyone in the field, finding something like this was the equivalent of discovering the Holy Grail. The professor had 2 small slices sent to Dr. Mona Serbescu at the Smithsonian for official confirmation. As soon as he held the specimen, he called it the most valuable rock he had ever examined. If their suspicions were correct, the meteorite could be worth up to $100,000. Weighing over 22 pounds, it was believed to be the 6th largest of its kind ever found in Michigan. Before sending the samples away, the professor performed an X-ray fluorescence test to confirm the concentrations of iron and nickel, and the readings matched perfectly. Further analysis by Dr. Kerry Corrigan at the Smithsonian confirmed without any doubt that it was an iron meteorite. Dr. Serbescu explained the rock was metallic, irregular in shape, and covered in thumbprint-like indentations formed as it partially melted during its passage through the atmosphere. Most importantly, the slice revealed a Widman-Stettin pattern, an arrangement of crystals that forms only in outer space and cannot be replicated on Earth. There was no question Ben's doorstop was a real meteorite. While Ben was thrilled, he also felt conflicted. The rock was the most extraordinary thing he had ever owned, yet he knew what it meant to the scientific community. After geologists completed their examinations, he had to decide whether to keep it, sell it to a museum, or allow a private collector to buy it. Ben learned that if he chose to sell, the meteorite would almost certainly end up in a museum like the Smithsonian, where thousands of visitors could see and appreciate it. He realized that sharing it with the world was the right thing to do, and selling it would allow him to improve his farm equipment and start a college fund for his children. Samples were sent to another lab, revealing rare elements that increased its value even further. Ben counted his lucky stars. His property had given him far more than a place to live. It had given him a secure and promising future for his family. In order to protect the privacy of those depicted, some names, locations, and identifying characteristics have been changed and are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblances to actual events or places or persons, living or dead, are entirely coincidental